Texas has its own power grid because it doesn't trust the rest of America. California makes more money than France, and Wyoming gave women the right to vote 50 years before anyone else. Every state has a secret. Here's all 50. Delaware became the first state on December 7th, 1787. The capital is Dover, but nobody cares about Dover. They care about Wilmington, where more corporations are registered than people actually live. Population: 1 million humans. Registered businesses: 1.8 million companies. Google is legally from Delaware. Amazon is from Delaware. Your favorite company that dodges taxes? Probably Delaware. The entire state is basically America's corporate tax shelter, wearing a smile. And speaking of states punching above their weight, Pennsylvania joined on December 12th, 1787, just 5 days later. Capital is Harrisburg. But here's what's wild. Pennsylvania literally went to war with Connecticut. Not a legal dispute. An actual war called the Pennamite Wars. People died fighting over what's now Scranton, the same Scranton from The Office. Also, Philadelphia was America's capital before Washington, D.C. existed, which means the Founding Fathers argued about democracy in the same city that now boos Santa Claus. That aggressive energy carried south to New Jersey, which became a state on December 18th, 1787. Capital is Trenton. New Jersey gets roasted constantly, but it has the highest population density in America, more scientists per square mile than anywhere else, and invented both baseball and basketball. It's also home to more diners than any place on Earth. The problem? Every highway has tolls. New Jersey is basically America's most expensive hallway connecting New York and Philadelphia. Down in Georgia, which joined on January 2nd, 1788, the capital is Atlanta, and they grow 50% of America's peanuts. The state vegetable is the Vidalia onion. Yes, they have a state vegetable. Coca-Cola was invented here, though not in Atlanta like everyone thinks. And Georgia once distributed land through a lottery system. Just show up, pull a number, congratulations, you own property. Imagine trying that today. Meanwhile, up north, Connecticut became a state on January 9th, 1788. Capital is Hartford, and this place has the highest per capita income in America. They also have legally defined pizza standards. If it's not thin enough, you can't call it New Haven-style pizza. They invented the hamburger here, not Germany. And the state insect is the praying mantis, which feels appropriate because everyone's praying they can afford their property taxes. Right next door, Massachusetts joined on February 6th, 1788. Capital is Boston. This is where America's revolution started over tea, and now the whole state runs on Dunkin' coffee. Massachusetts has more colleges per capita than anywhere, invented basketball, volleyball, and the chocolate chip cookie. They also banned happy hour, and it's still illegal. Plus, Cape Cod is literally breaking off and floating away. GPS confirms the state is slowly losing land to the ocean. Just south, Maryland became a state on April 28th, 1788. Capital is Annapolis. Maryland has the weirdest shape of any state because of a surveying mistake that nobody ever fixed. The state sport is jousting. Medieval jousting with horses and lances in the year 2024. They have more millionaires per capita than almost anywhere, and Maryland legally designated the calico as the state cat. They have an official cat. Below Maryland, South Carolina joined on May 23rd, 1788. Capital is Columbia. South Carolina has an island called Morgan Island, with 4,000 wild monkeys and 0 humans allowed. The state also attacks more sharks than sharks attack people here, which says something about South Carolina's attitude. They started the Civil War at Fort Sumter, and there's a town called Sugar Tit. Not making that up. Back up north, New Hampshire became a state on June 21st, 1788. Capital's Concord. New Hampshire has no sales tax and no income tax, but the property tax will financially destroy you. The state motto is "Live free or die," which was printed on license plates made by prisoners. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. They also treat maple syrup theft as a serious crime. Steal sap from someone's tree? That's jail time. Virginia joined on June 25th, 1788. Capital is Richmond. Virginia produced 8 presidents, more than any other state. It has the world's largest naval base in Norfolk. And here's something weird. The Pentagon has twice as many bathrooms as necessary because it was built during segregation. Also, Virginia extends further west than West Virginia, which makes zero geographical sense. The big one, New York, became a state on July 26, 1788. Capital is Albany, not New York City, which confuses tourists constantly. New York City alone has more people than 40 entire states. Niagara Falls generates enough power to run half the state. The Adirondack Park is bigger than Yellowstone, Yosemite, the Grand Canyon, and Great Smoky Mountains combined. And toilet paper was invented in New York City in 1857, so you're welcome, humanity. Down south, North Carolina joined on November 21st, 1789. Capital is Raleigh. North Carolina claims first in flight because the Wright brothers flew at Kitty Hawk, even though the brothers were from Ohio, which causes endless arguments. The state has the most NASCAR tracks, invented Pepsi, Krispy Kreme donuts, and Cheerwine soda. The Venus flytrap only grows naturally in North Carolina, nowhere else on Earth. And Blackbeard, the pirate's ship, is still sitting off the coast. Tiny Rhode Island finally joined on May 29th, 1790. Capital is Providence. Rhode Island is the smallest state with the longest official name. It used to be State of Rhode Island and Providence Plantations, until 2020 when they finally shortened it. The state has more shipwrecks per mile of coastline than anywhere, and the official state drink is coffee milk, which is not the same as coffee. It's milk with coffee syrup. Different thing entirely. March 4th, 1791. Capital is Montpelier. Vermont makes 50% of America's maple syrup and has more cows than people. Billboards are completely illegal here, all of them. The state was actually its own independent country for 14 years called the Republic of Vermont. They had their own currency, postal system, and everything. Then, they joined America and gave us Ben and Jerry's ice cream and Bernie Sanders. Kentucky joined on June 1st, 1792. Capital is Frankfort. Kentucky has more miles of running water than any state except Alaska. The Kentucky Derby horse race lasts about 2 minutes, making it the shortest major sporting event people actually care about. Fort Knox stores 147 million ounces of gold, worth roughly $260 billion, and Kentuckians will fight you over bourbon definitions. All bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskey is bourbon, and it must be made in Kentucky. Tennessee became a state on June 1st, 1796, same day as Kentucky, but 4 years later. Capital is Nashville. Nashville built a full-scale replica of the Greek Parthenon, which confuses everyone. Reelfoot Lake was created when an earthquake made the Mississippi River run backwards. Mountain Dew was invented here as a whiskey mixer. And Elvis Presley died on a toilet in Memphis, which feels like important historical context. Ohio joined on March 1st, 1803. Capital is Columbus. Here's the thing. Ohio technically wasn't legally a state until 1953 because Congress forgot to vote on it. For 150 years, Ohio was just pretending. The state produced more astronauts than anywhere else, which people joke is because Ohioans desperately want to leave Ohio. Cedar Point Amusement Park has more roller coasters than any park on Earth. Louisiana became a state on April 30th, 1812. Capital is Baton Rouge. Louisiana has parishes instead of counties because of French influence. New Orleans sits below sea level, so dead people are buried above ground in tombs. Louisiana law is completely different from the other 49 states because it still uses Napoleonic Code instead of English common law. And they have drive-through daiquiri shops where it's legal as long as the straw stays wrapped. Indiana joined on December 11th, 1816. Capital is Indianapolis. Indiana has more interstate highway per square mile than any state. The Indianapolis 500 is the world's largest single-day sporting event with 400,000 people attending. A town called Santa Claus, Indiana receives millions of Christmas letters every year, and Larry Bird is from a town called French Lick, which provides endless entertainment. Mississippi became a state on December 10th, 1817. Capital is Jackson. Mississippi has 4 S's, 4 I's, and 2 P's in its name, which every kid remembers forever. Root beer was invented here. The state has the world's only cactus plantation, which is weird for a place known for swamps. And Mississippi officially ratified the 13th Amendment, abolishing slavery in 2013, only 148 years late. Illinois joined on December 3rd, 1818. Capital is Springfield. Chicago engineered its river to flow backwards, making it the only major city to reverse a river's direction. Illinois has more personalized license plates than regular ones. The state produces more pumpkins than anywhere. 85% of the world's canned pumpkin comes from Illinois, and anyone who pronounces the S at the end of Illinois deserves to be corrected loudly. Alabama became a state on December 14th, 1819. Capital is Montgomery. Alabama has the most snail species diversity in North America. Huntsville, called Rocket City, USA, designed the rockets that put humans on the moon. The state has all the major natural resources needed to make iron and steel in one place. The Unclaimed Baggage Center in Scottsboro sells lost airline luggage to bargain hunters. And Alabama's state constitution is 388,882 words long, the longest constitution in the world, about 40 times longer than the U.S. Constitution. Maine joined on March 15th, 1820. Capital is Augusta. Maine has more coastline than California, thanks to all its jagged inlets and islands. It's the toothpick capital of the world. Eastport, Maine is the first place in America to see the sunrise each morning. The state has the only desert in New England, 40 acres of sand called the Desert of Maine. And Stephen King sets every horror novel in Maine, which should tell you something about the place. Missouri became a state on August 10th, 1821. Capital is Jefferson City. Missouri has more than 6,000 documented caves, the most of any state. The ice cream cone was invented at the 1904 World's Fair in St. Louis, when an ice cream vendor ran out of dishes. Mark Twain was from Missouri and basically invented the American novel with Huckleberry Finn. And most of Kansas City is actually in Missouri. So not Kansas, which confuses everyone constantly. Arkansas joined on June 15th, 1836. Capital is Little Rock. Arkansas has the only active diamond mine in America that's open to the public at Crater of Diamonds State Park. Finders keepers. Walmart started in Bentonville, Arkansas, and proceeded to destroy every small-town main street in America. The state name comes from French, but it's actually illegal to mispronounce it as Arkansas, thanks to an 1881 law. And there's a town called Toad Suck with an annual festival. Michigan became a state on January 26, 1837. Capital is Lansing. Michigan touches 4 of the 5 Great Lakes, giving it access to 21% of the world's fresh surface water. The state has more miles of coastline than any state except Alaska. Detroit built the first mile of paved road in America. Now, Michigan fought an actual war with Ohio over Toledo. Ohio got Toledo. Michigan got the entire Upper Peninsula. Michigan clearly won that deal. Florida joined on March 3rd, 1845. Capital is Tallahassee. Florida is the only state with 2 rivers that have the same name, both called Withlacoochee. The highest point in Florida is 345 feet above sea level, a hill called Britton Hill. The state releases more exotic animals into the wild than anywhere. Burmese pythons, iguanas, monkeys all over the place. And Florida Man exists as a phenomenon because of sunshine laws that make all arrest records immediately public. Texas became a state on December 29, 1845. Capital is Austin. Texas was its own country, the Republic of Texas, for 10 years before joining America. The state can legally split into 5 separate states whenever it wants, according to its annexation agreement. Texas has its own power grid that doesn't connect to America's main grids because it doesn't trust federal regulation. King Ranch is bigger than the entire state of Rhode Island. Don't Mess with Texas was originally an anti-littering slogan. And it's illegal to own more than 6 dildos in Texas, but you can own unlimited guns. Iowa joined on December 28, 1846. Capital is Des Moines. Iowa produces more corn than most countries produce of anything. The state has more golf courses per capita than anywhere. The first electronic digital computer was invented at Iowa State University. RAGBRAI, the register's annual Great Bicycle Ride across Iowa, brings 20,000 cyclists across the entire state every summer. And there's a town called What Cheer, with a population of 646 people who seem confused about their own town's name. Wisconsin became a state on May 29, 1848. Capital is Madison. Wisconsin produces 26% of America's cheese, about 2.5 billion pounds yearly. The state has more bars per capita than anywhere else in America. Green Bay is the toilet paper capital of the world. Margarine was illegal in Wisconsin until 1967 because the dairy lobby is extremely serious here. And the Green Bay Packers are owned by the city's residents, making it the only communist team in the NFL. California joined on September 9, 1850. Capital is Sacramento. California has the 5th largest economy in the world. Not 5th in America, 5th on planet Earth. Just California alone outproduces most countries. The state grows 80% of the world's almonds and uses 10% of California's water to do it. California has more people than all of Canada, and Death Valley recorded the hottest temperature ever measured on Earth at 134 degrees Fahrenheit. And the state would be its own superpower if it ever left America. Minnesota became a state on May 11, 1858. Capital is St. Paul. Minnesota has more shoreline than California, Florida, and Hawaii, combined thanks to 11,842 lakes. The Mall of America in Bloomington has no heating system. The body heat from shoppers keeps the building warm year-round. The Spam Museum celebrates canned meat as a cultural achievement, and mosquitoes are so numerous that Minnesotans joke it's the unofficial state bird. Oregon joined on February 14, 1859. Capital is Salem. Oregon has the world's smallest park. Millen's Park is exactly 2 feet across and features a swimming pool for butterflies, according to local legend. It's illegal to pump your own gas in Oregon. All gas stations are full service by law. Crater Lake is so clear, you can see objects 100 feet underwater. And Oregon became a state on Valentine's Day, making it one of 2 romantically timed state admissions. Kansas became a state on January 29, 1861. Capital is Topeka. Scientists actually measured Kansas and determined it's flatter than a pancake. The state produces more wheat than most countries. The helicopter was invented in Kansas, which seems unexpected. There's a town called Liberal that's extremely conservative politically. And Dorothy was absolutely right in The Wizard of Oz. There's really nothing happening here. West Virginia joined on June 20, 1863, right in the middle of the Civil War. Capital is Charleston. West Virginia is the only state that formed by seceding from a Confederate state. It broke away from Virginia during the war. The New River is one of the oldest rivers on Earth, despite being called new. West Virginia has the highest average elevation of any state east of the Mississippi River. Mother's Day was founded here, and the Mothman legend brings cryptid tourists to Point Pleasant constantly. Nevada became a state on October 31, 1864. Capital is Carson City. Nevada joined America on Halloween, which explains a lot about Las Vegas. The state has 314 mountain ranges, more than any other state. Area 51 sits 83 miles from Las Vegas, and the government still won't confirm what happens there. Prostitution is legal in some Nevada counties, but not in Las Vegas or Reno. And Nevada has more hotel rooms than permanent residents, 130,000 hotel rooms for 3 million people. Nebraska joined on March 1, 1867. Capital is Lincoln. Nebraska has a unicameral legislature, the only state with a single-house system instead of separate House and Senate. Arbor Day was founded in Nebraska because the state had almost no trees, so they planted millions. The band 311 is named after Nebraska's non-emergency police number. And Kool-Aid was invented in Hastings, Nebraska, in 1927. It's the official state soft drink, and they're genuinely proud of flavored powder. Colorado became a state on August 1st, 1876. Capital is Denver. Colorado has the highest average elevation of any state at 6,800 feet above sea level. Denver's exactly 1 mile high. The 13th step of the state capitol building marks 5,280 feet. The state has 58 mountain peaks over 14,000 feet tall. And marijuana legalization generated $387 million in tax revenue last year, which built really nice schools. North Dakota joined on November 2nd, 1889. Capital is Bismarck. North Dakota grows more sunflowers than anywhere in America. The state has more wildlife refuges than any other state. Rugby, North Dakota marks the geographic center of North America with a stone monument. And North Dakota quietly has 150 Minuteman, 3 nuclear missiles in underground silos, scattered across the state more than anywhere else. South Dakota became a state the exact same day, November 2nd, 1889. Capital is Pierre. Nobody knows which Dakota became a state first because President Harrison shuffled the papers on purpose to avoid the argument. Mount Rushmore took 14 years to carve and still isn't technically finished. South Dakota has more Native Americans per capita than any state, and the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally brings 500,000 bikers every year to a town with a normal population of 7,000 people. Montana joined on November 8th, 1889. Capital is Helena. Montana has 3 times as many cows as people. It's the only state with a triple divide where water flows toward 3 different oceans from one point. The state has 3 separate towns, all named Fish Trap, and Montana means mountain in Spanish. But the eastern half of the state is completely flat prairie. Washington became a state on November 11th, 1889. Capital is Olympia. Washington produces 70% of America's apples. The state has the only temperate rainforest in the continental United States on the Olympic Peninsula. Seattle has more coffee shops per capita than any American city. And the Space Needle was built for the 1962 World's Fair as a temporary structure, but became permanent. Idaho joined on July 3rd, 1890. Capital is Boise. Idaho grows 60% of America's potatoes and produces most of the world's trout. Hell's Canyon is the deepest river gorge in North America, deeper than even the Grand Canyon. And the Idaho State Seal is the only state seal designed by a woman, Emma Edwards Green, in 1891. Wyoming became a state on July 10th, 1890. Capital is Cheyenne. Wyoming is the least populated state with only 580,000 people, but it has twice as many antelope as humans. Wyoming was the first place in America to grant women the right to vote in 1869, beating the rest of the country by 50 years. Yellowstone National Park was the world's first national park. And Wyoming is the only state with perfectly straight borders on all 4 sides. Utah joined on January 4th, 1896. Capital is Salt Lake City. The Great Salt Lake is saltier than the ocean. Fry sauce, a combination of mayonnaise and ketchup, was invented in Utah, and residents act like it's revolutionary. Utah has the highest per capita Jell-O consumption on Earth, and the entire state was basically founded by people fleeing federal government persecution. Oklahoma became a state on November 16th, 1907. Capital is Oklahoma City. Oklahoma experiences more tornado activity than anywhere on Earth, the absolute center of Tornado Alley. The shopping cart was invented in Oklahoma in 1937, completely changing how grocery stores operate. Oklahoma has more man-made lakes than any other state, and the official state meal consists of 12 different dishes that take 3 hours to eat. New Mexico joined on January 6th, 1912. Say capital is Santa Fe. New Mexico has an older name than the country of Mexico by about 250 years. The state has more PhDs per capita than anywhere thanks to Los Alamos National Laboratory. Wine production started in New Mexico 100 years before California made its first wine. And residents constantly have to specify New Mexico, or people think they left the country. Arizona became a state on February 14th, 1912, also on Valentine's Day. Capital is Phoenix. Arizona has more certified international dark sky places than anywhere for astronomical observation. The saguaro cactus only grows naturally in Arizona, nowhere else on Earth. And Arizona doesn't observe daylight saving time, except the Navajo Nation does observe it. Except the Hopi Reservation inside the Navajo Nation doesn't, creating a time zone nightmare. Alaska joined on January 3, 1959. Capital is Juneau. America bought Alaska from Russia for about 2 cents per acre in 1867, and Russia's still mad about it. Alaska is larger than Texas, California, and Montana combined. The state has 3 million lakes, and Alaska pays residents an annual dividend just for living there, about $1,600 per year from oil revenue. Finally, Hawaii became the 50th state on August 21, 1959. Capital is Honolulu. Hawaii is the only state that was formerly a kingdom with its own monarchy. Queen Liliuokalani was overthrown in 1893 by American fruit companies, specifically Dole, who literally stole a country to grow pineapples. Hawaii is the only state made entirely of islands, and the Big Island is still growing because active volcanoes add new land every single day, from Delaware's corporate tax schemes to Hawaii's stolen throne. California's economy rivals entire nations. Texas was its own country. Alaska's bigger than 3 states combined. And Rhode Island fits inside Alaska 425 times. Every state thinks it's the most important. And honestly, they're all kind of right. Remove any single state, and American history completely changes. Your turn. Comment which state is secretly the most important and defend your answer.